Amazing. All right. So I'm going to start with an introduction today. So we're speaking on the DoubleODSPNow, and this is a conversation on disability justice, food security, and reshaping our understanding of the Ontario Disability Support Program, which is also known as ODSP. So I'll just get into the introduction. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this very important conversation on ODSP. Feel free to join us in the conversation by using the chat function, introduce yourselves, tell us where you're joining from, and drop any questions that you might have for any of us throughout the conversation in the chat below. This live will be recorded and posted to our Instagram later afterwards for all of those who are interested in rewatching it, or if you missed it and want to watch it, we're going to have that posted on the Foodshare Instagram. So, at Foodshare, our vision is a Toronto where everyone can feed themselves, their families, and their communities with dignity and joy. We know that food insecurity is deeply tied to poverty, that food insecurity is most prevalent among households with inadequate, insecure incomes and few, if any, financial assets. This is reflected by the fact that the food insecurity rate in Ontario is more than 4 times greater for households relying on social assistance. As the provincial elections approach on June 2nd, Foodshare is joining ODSP clients and community advocates in calling on all party leaders to commit to doubling ODSP rates immediately elected. Today, we're joined by disability justice advocates Maddie Dever and Sana Saudi to talk about ODSP work for people with disabilities. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us and sharing your knowledge. It is an honor for me to be moderating this, and I'm really excited. We'll get into your introductions. Maddie Dever is a non-binary wheelchair user with a spinal cord injury, autistic adult, and 5 children with 4 that are also on the autistic. They advocate for inclusion and acceptance of autistic individuals and other people with disabilities, and for people with disabilities to have their own voice and policy decisions. Maddie is a former member of the Ontario Autism Program Advisory and Ontario Autism Program Implementation Working Group. Maddie is the founder of Autistic Bridge, Inc., and is on the board of directors of Autism Alliance Canada, formerly known as CASDA, and Connect Well Community Health. We also have Sana Saudi today, who is a multimedia artist, educator, and community organizer based in Hamilton. They have advocated for the participation of BIPOC communities and artist-run centers to national galleries and DIY venues. They are an emerging curator who is interested in disrupting ableism and colonialism through practices that empower marginalized communities. They currently work as the administrative coordinator at the Disability Justice Network of Ontario. And my name is Kaylee. I work for Foodshare. I am also part of the Disability Justice Task Force, which we have just had a couple meetings and wrote up this discussion on ODSP and doubling the rates for it, because $600 to $1,200 is not enough. I also work in the community food growing department, so I am an urban farmer with Foodshare. Love my job. All right. So let's start off with a little brief overview of what the organizations that you guys are working with are doing. So Sada, can you give us an overview of the Disability Justice Network of Ontario?
Yeah, for sure. So DJNO was founded by Black and Brown women in 2018. We are a network that aims to build a just and accessible Ontario wherein people with disabilities have both personal and political agency, to thrive and foster community, build power and capacity, as well as skills needed to hold people, communities, and institutions responsible for the spaces that they create. We're currently based in Hamilton, Ontario, because Hamilton has the largest density of disabled people per capita. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, when food banks were closed and grocery stores were scary, still are very scary, we started something called Caremongering, which was this mutual aid program that delivered groceries to over 10,000 families. We have this new program right now called the Assisted Devices Library, which is solely being supported through community donations. And we continue to do advocacy around abolishing long-term care and the carceral nature of institutionalized care work. We actually have a research report coming out soon around building a disability-centered just recovery strategy in response to COVID-19. And currently we are focused on organizing around the fight against the MAID expansion.
Amazing. I can't wait to get into that conversation about the medical assistance and dying.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for being here. And then Maddie,
Thank you.
Give us on the DoubleODSPNow campaign, hashtag DoubleODSPNow.
Sure. I've been, for the last few years, I've been doing a lot of advocacy and autism and education. But I started realizing that, you know, the larger disability community is, we need all barriers removed. We need everything removed. And one of the chief things that we see is, you know, there's over 400,000 of us that are on ODSP, the Ontario Disability Support Program. The current rate for ODSP for an individual is $1,169. Can anyone live on that? So the poverty line in Canada right now is $2,200. There's a significant difference of almost $1,100. It's almost double of what we're currently getting. And we haven't seen an increase in ODSP since 2018 of 1.5. It was supposed to be 3% over 3 years, over the 3%. But when the PCs took over, they cut the first one down to 1.5, and they've never given an increase since then. Inflation has been, over the last 2 years since COVID began, has been 11%. It's currently 6.7% a year. Every single month, $7 of buying power disappears from us because inflation takes it away from us. So the cost of everything is increasing, and what we have is decreasing because of inflation. So the campaign that we started right before the election, DoubleODSPNow with the hashtag, is really to put people with disability in the forefront, in all the decision makers, to put, you know, do we have a society that is okay with people with disabilities living in poverty, in legislative poverty, with no ability to get out? We have all of these things that all these barriers within the ODSP to get on ODSP, to earn income on ODSP, to have relationships with other people on ODSP. ODSP was considered, you know, for the last 27 years, ODSP has been considered a social assistance, like the Ontario Works program. And it's just created a huge problem. So a lot of allies got together, a lot of different disability groups, and we've been focusing on the one question: will your party double ODSP now in 2022? And that's where we began.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing that. Definitely an important thing. I'm really happy to be with you right now, and that you guys are doing such important work. So, Matt, you've been leading a lot of work around the DoubleODSPNow campaign that we've just spoken about. As the title of the campaign suggests, it's a call of duty for all party leaders to commit to doubling ODSP rates immediately if elected. Why is it urgent and important to double ODSP rates? And what are some of the other considerations and changes that need to be made to the program?
Sure. So the base thing we need to do is catch up on the last 27 years where we have received fewer, you know, when Mike Harris created ODSP back in 1996 and cut the rates of the programs that were available for people with disabilities, we have never kept up with inflation from that point.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have this massive gap where we can't afford rent, we can't afford utilities, we can't afford food all at the same time. Every month it gets harder. So doubling ODSP now gets us to that breathing line where we're at or just slightly above the poverty line. And, you know, it's a domino effect. You know, when you have stable income, you can have stable housing. When you have stable housing, you can have stable employment if you're able to or wish to. If you have stable employment, it provides other things. If you have stable income and stable housing, you can have more access to better food nutrition, better choices, better when you have a healthier food, when your nutrition is taken care of, then you're less susceptible to poor medical health and all of these things. When you have all of these things stable, your mental health is, you have a better opportunity to have to be able to handle mental health or not have the mental health issues that we face because of all this situations, because of all the barriers. So that stable income changes everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the beginning of a path, but there's still other things. Right now we have clawbacks. We're allowed to make the first $200 of what we make, we keep. Then after that point, we only get to keep 50% of what we make. So it's a struggle to push through. It's a struggle. We want to get ahead. We feel that we have the ability to do a little bit more, but it's taken away from us. Yeah, we're still nowhere near the poverty line. So instead of having clawbacks, it would be better to have a cap of what we can earn, and we can earn anything up to that cap. And at that cap point, we look at, do you need income support or do you need other supports? And that's the other part. ODSP right now is mostly income, but the word support is in there. And it would be great to be able to have the wraparound supports, things that would allow us to not just survive, but thrive. Things like being able to have physiotherapy, things like be able to have better life coaching, things that can help with being able to find housing and sustain housing. There's a lot of supports that we could have that would allow us to, even if we can't work, the working does not provide value to you. Your value isn't in what you're able to contribute to society. You have inherent value, and we need to be able to be and explore the different things, different opportunities that we can't do right now because we don't have money, we don't have housing, we don't have good food, we don't have stable employment because of all these things. Changing ODSP and we're moving it from being a social assistance program to being a benefit and support program would change things. Even the language we use could change how we're seeing, and there wouldn't be the stigma being on ODSP, but there would be a pathway to thriving.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. All right. So Disability Justice Network of Ontario has done a lot of advocacy around Bill C7 and medical assistance in dying, also known as MAID. Sara, can you give us an overview of that work and touch on the impacts of expanding access to MAID onto poor, Black, and Indigenous disabled folks?
Yeah, for sure. So last year, the government passed the expansion of Bill C14, medical assistance in dying. And in this expansion, they added a second track to the bill, which says that if you're disabled, you could be considered as suffering and therefore don't need to be terminally ill to use MAID. They also passed an expansion which will come into effect in 2023, which states that people with mental illnesses can also qualify for MAID. The government did not talk to Black or racialized disabled people or poor disabled people to ask how this expansion would impact them. And since then, we have seen several cases of disabled people who have used MAID because they can't afford rent or food and or just are tired of struggling. So this expanded legislation is ableist, and even though social assistance rates across Canada are legislated below the poverty line, many disabled people are suffering because their material needs are being ignored or continue to be ignored. The government chose to expand MAID as a policy solution. And so I just want to repeat that again. The government chose to expand MAID as a policy solution rather than responding to the housing crisis, rather than responding to the fact that the costs of living are going up. The government chose to expand MAID as a policy solution. And so about 200 non-terminally ill disabled people that we know have used MAID since it was expanded. And the Canadian Human Rights Commission put out a statement explaining that the expansion of MAID, while the material needs of disabled people continue to be ignored, is inherently ableist.
100%. is definitely an ableist thing to have accessible to people. Another thing that I worry about with a lot of conversations that I've had within like my indigenous communities is that suicide rates are very high on reserves, and especially in the north, like in the Inuit community. And just thinking how this is going to assist in making that problem even bigger, just like this part of me.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. The
yeah.
expansion like disproportionately affects Indigenous youth for sure. Yeah.
So the next question on the same topic for yourself is, knowing that the government is expanding access to aid, what would you like to see instead? And what are examples of policies and programming that could actually support people?
Yeah, so for starters, they just need to slow down. I want people to realize that the committee responsible for expanding MAID so that mature minors and people with mental illnesses can qualify haven't actually consulted people with disabilities, just those who are actually afraid of becoming disabled. The fact that the government is choosing to legislate this policy over responding to the housing crisis, which we know they can, and over responding to the fact that living costs are going up, which we know they can respond to, it's just like I actually just don't have words for this. Sometimes you run out of words to describe cruelty, like legislating poverty and then government-funded access to death over disabled people's ability to have access to meaningful support, such as food and sheltered and a sustained life. Like, quite frankly, it's giving eugenics.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And, you know, we've sounded the alarms. We know that the healthcare system is ableist. We know and have experienced medical racism. Disabled people will be coerced into accessing MAID. It's already happening. What we need to create the ability for disabled people to live freely instead of just funding death. What we need is accessible and affordable housing options. We need assisted devices. They need to be treated as part of our healthcare system, and they should be funded. ODSP and other social assistance rates should be equal to living wages. And healthcare should be properly universal, including pharmacare. And disabled people should not be punished for being disabled.
Thank you so much. So we know that financial support for people living with disabilities isn't nearly sufficient. So before we wrap up the discussion and move on to the Q&A, I want to talk about what else is needed alongside to the call to increase ODSP rates. So Maddie, in the past, you've spoken about how we need to reshape the public understanding of ODSP. What are some of the misconceptions around the program?
All right, so the first thing, you know, we have to just understand that 1169, that's how much an individual on ODSP has to live. You know, $500, less than $500 of that is supposed to go towards shelter. And we know that anybody out there trying to find housing right now, in most communities, where I live in Carleton Place, which is in rural Eastern Ontario, the cheapest one-bedroom apartment is $1,900. So where do we go? We have to be able to find a way of funding housing, you know, affordable and accessible housing. You know, we need to make sure that all new affordable units that are being built are also accessible, not just for people with disabilities, but people, you know, seniors. We want to be able to live where we are, stay in the communities where we are, age where we are, grow as we are, and that's not a possibility right now. We also, you know, a lot of people have more in the right side of the spectrum keep saying, well, the best social service is a job. 70% of people on ODSP can't work or can't work continuously, and the other 30% can work, but not necessarily, you know, all the time, you know, for years on end. Things happen. We're disabled. There's a reason why we got approved for ODSP, which is in itself a big problem. So some of the myths that we hear is that, oh, you're just, you know, you're just getting free money. You just, you know, you don't, you're just, it just encourages people to be lazy. I would, anybody that says that, I would give them a month or 2 months to live on what we get and say, hey, this is the life. There's a stigma attached to this, to being on ODSP, because it's considered to be a social assistance, and we need to remove that. We need to build it. We need to build up a program that truly supports, that has the aim of seeing people with disabilities not just surviving but thriving. That means providing, all kinds of supports and services, and not this constant work is the answer. You want more money, will work. We need to have a baseline and support us, but find a way to build us up and give us the opportunities that we don't have. And if we can change the program away from that social assistant mindset, we change the language we use, and we make it a very positive, we make it a very strength-based process of getting onto it. I think that the stigma attached to being disabled and ODSP will go away. It's being disabled is not a choice. It happens through birth. It happens through life. But we don't want, if we continue down this path of not funding ODSP, of not providing the services, of the mentality of the work being the only way out of this, the only option left is suicide or MAID. Our health, the more we struggle, the worse our health gets. The worse our health gets, the closer we are to, the more problems we have, and the more funding the government's going to have to do when we're in hospitals, we're in long-term care homes. If we fund us to live and allow us to thrive, everybody wins.
Very true. So, this is the last question before we get into the Q&A. So for Sada, what comes to mind when you think of reshaping the way that we look at disability? And what are some of the beliefs you want people to reconsider about as they walk away from this conversation that we're having?
Yeah, I want people to understand that disabled lives are worth living. Oftentimes, able-bodied people and neurotypical people assume that our lives are not, and that's untrue. Disabled people are not disposable despite what our governments tell us. We live full lives. We live joyfully, even if society does not make it difficult. I also want people to understand that we all actually have a stake in this. We should all be mobilizing collectively to demand that social assistance rates be increased, because if we don't, we'll continue to see more disabled people opting for suicide or for MAID.
Thank you so much. So the question segment went a little bit quicker than anticipated, so we do have a little bit of extra time for the Q&A. So if anyone watching right now put any questions in the chat, or there's also a little question box with the little bubble and the question mark. If you want to put any questions into either two of those, definitely feel free to go ahead. I actually do have a question for both of you. Whoever wants to go first, ask a question. But the question is, with unlimited funds, what would you do for the disabled community, and how would you want to see the future for us? And you can take some time to...
Sure. I can. Unlimited funds. Well, first of all, let's double ODSP, and then let's create a portable housing benefit that we don't have to worry about rent. We can find the housing and get housing support wherever we need it. Build accessible houses, and fund organizations, fund developers to retrofit existing homes so that they can be, universal design, they can be accessible. If we do that, then we have given a pathway to living that we don't have right now. Those are some of the biggest obstacles, is having money to live and having a place to live. When we get those two things stable first, oh my gosh, everything else is, the opportunities become much, much bigger.
Thank you. Did you want to answer it as well?
Sure, that's a big question. Unlimited funds. Yeah, I agree with Maddie. I'd build like actually affordable housing, not just market rent housing. Like it would be rent geared to income, because we know that people who live on ODSP like can't afford market rent, and that it's absolutely impossible to live on ODSP and afford market rent. With unlimited funds, I don't know. I'd build programs and services that actually keep our community safe, that actually keep disabled people safe. With unlimited funds, I'd give Indigenous people their land back. If that's not an obvious one. Also abolish prisons and long-term care homes because they don't keep disabled people safe. And we know that people who live in long-term care homes are also being coerced into choosing MAID. And we also know that people who are incarcerated, people who are in prisons are being coerced into choosing MAID.
There's two other things I would add that
Yeah.
I give them more time to think about it. I think really developing co-ops as a good housing alternative to affordable housing. Co-ops encourage community, encourage doing things together, and I think when we have other people around us who share some of our life stories, working together, it just improves a lot of things. And the other thing is really good accessible transportation available to everyone. Doesn't matter whether you're in cities, doesn't matter if you're in rural communities. Accessible transportation is such a struggle, and I would make sure that everything was accessible. Every building that needed to get, every transportation thing, every transit stop, and there should be accessible, the actual vans, trains, buses, whatever, accessible.
Bathrooms in restaurants, even that's been a barrier for a lot of my family members, especially in the city when the bathrooms are in the basement.
So much.
Yeah. I really hope that we can work towards a future where we can see the things that you guys just shared with us, because I would just love to see. So I'm going to go off with some of the questions that we've been asked. So one of the questions that we have is, we hear a lot about basic income as a solution. Are there risks or benefits for moving towards basic income from your perspective?
So we currently spend a lot of money on services and funding things and subsidies that if we actually reallocated to people as a basic income, we'd probably be spending about the same amount of money. The thing is, when people have money, they spend it. When they spend it, the economy around them grows. So the risk is, what is the basic income? If it's set too low, it doesn't really help people. If it's set too high, then the society around it can't afford it. But there is a point where the amount of money that you're providing to people as a basic bit, it will actually improve the economy, and we're spending the same amount of money. So where it's done well, lives improve and economies thrive. Where it's done not so well, it can be a disaster. So it's about finding that balance, but knowing that there should be that amount.
Did
you have any words for this question, Sada?
Yeah, no, I agree with what Maddie has said. I'll also mention that like during the pandemic, the government did implement some sort of like universal basic income, but it didn't include disabled people. So I guess to that, just saying that if it includes disabled people, if we're going to have universal basic.
Yeah, I mean, we know that the cost of disability, our costs are higher, and the reason why there's disability programs is supposed to help you, provide, for those, like, okay, so when you have children and they have disabilities. There's different programs that are available to you that help meet their needs and supplement things so that you can pay for the things that cost more because they're disabled. When you're not, all that goes away. Somehow at 18 years, magically you can live on a below poverty thing, and you don't get any additional support. It's CERB showed us what the floor is for the amount to live on. And CERB, that's for an individual. $2,000 for an individual. So if you're two people married, $4,000. That's the floor. That's not where it's still below poverty, but it's close to it. We need to find where that, where the floor is and where the ceiling is, and we can support people because we've done it. But people with disability need a little bit more than that.
Definitely. So the next question I have in the chat is, how do you respond to the idea that some folks suggest people will take advantage of the system if we do increase ODSP?
Well, I don't want to penalize 99% for the 1% that may.
Exactly.
Right? There was not much fraud at all in the disability programs that existed in 1996, but the PCs insisted that there was lots of fraud, so that 1% was justification to strip 32% of the income for 99% of us. We can't make that mistake going forward. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, sometimes I can't entertain that question because, doing everything you can to make sure that you're surviving in this world and in this time right now, I don't think that's taking advantage of the system. And also, as a result of all systemic failures and government failures, I don't think people asking for more to survive and to live is taking advantage.
Yeah.
And it's really, some people look at, there are so many invisible disabilities that still affect a person's ability to work, to do activities of daily living. And what you're seeing, right now, you can see me talk. You can see me, I'm able to think, I'm able to do stuff. I'm locked in my chair, right? Beyond this chair, beyond this space, I have very little ability to do things, and things need to be done for me. But here, it looks like things are all okay and great, notwithstanding the fact that I'm feeling pain. I'm always in pain. You can't, it's really inappropriate to judge what somebody looks like they're doing, taking advantage of the system, because so many people, 2.6 million people in Ontario have a disability of some sort. 400,000 of us are on ODSP. There's a large amount of people that have been able to keep going, and have been able to work, have been able to afford things. But at some point, these numbers grow, because at some point they can't. And when they can't work and they can't provide an income, they go on ODSP, and it's a real struggle and challenge to do that. So if you've gone through all of the hoops to get approved to ODSP, you're disabled, and you're not really fooling the system. And even if you were, you're still spending money. You're still putting that money into the economy, even if you're not working, because you should be able to. It's so frustrating, that question.
It is a very frustrating question. All right. This little text is so tiny. Find another. Okay. So we have a question that says, the CDC finally admitted that 1 in 5 people get long COVID. Thoughts on how this could relate to disability supports, demand, etc. for ODSP?
Yeah, it will probably increase the amount of people needing ODSP. We can have a whole discussion about COVID and how it's the world looks at preventing death and not preventing disability, and they all the media stories talk about the effect, the death rate and whatnot, which was significant, and it's an important thing. But the amount of people that have long COVID, the amount of people that have disabilities after this, the world's not prepared to support them because they're not supporting us. The mindset of our world needs to change so that we are concerned about people with disabilities and not just concerned about people living, right? It's an attitude shift that we really need to find a way to work through, that people care about living and not just not dying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Going back as well as what you were saying earlier in this conversation about like shifting words that we use when talking about ODSP, like it is called a support program. And I've never actually thought about that before, but it really should be called a benefit because it just feeds more into the stigma of the question that we just had prior to this, like people taking advantage of ODSP and all of the stuff that comes with that, you know?
Yeah.
So I do really agree with stick with me.
It's called the Ontario Disability Support Benefit.
Yeah. I also would like to say that there is Renee in the chat who is linking our campaign for this DoubleODSPNow. If anyone wants to sign into it, the link is foodshare.net/double-ODSP-now, and it can also be found in our Foodshare Instagram's bio. And let's see if we have any more questions.
Yeah. So right now, the political parties, this is all their promises so far with regarding to ODSP. So the Ontario PC Party has said that they will they will increase ODSP in 2022 by 5%, and then have legislation that will link it to inflation from that point onwards. The Ontario Liberal Party said they'll do 10% in 2022, another 10% in 2023, and then look at to inflation, but also look at how they could improve it and get close to the poverty line. The NDP has said that they'll do it 20% in 2022, and then bring it up to doubling it in the second year of their term. Still murky whether it's immediately after or whatnot, but and then they will link it to inflation. And the Green Party will do it, will double ODSP immediately in 2022. And the other thing that the Liberal, I'm not sure, some of the Liberals, but the NDP and the Green Party definitely want to do reforms to ODSP itself, removing the clawbacks, removing the way ODSP is tied in a family. So right now, if I was to have a relationship with somebody, my ODSP would be reduced if they had another income, and there's a real penalty to doing that. So changing some of these rules, changing some of these restrictions, and making it a bigger program than it is. Both the NDP and the Green Party have been talking about that.
Mm-hmm. For sure, that's something we're really looking at with each party platform. And NDP and Green seem to care about a lot of the social things that we're moving towards as a community. Yeah, it doesn't seem like we have any more questions from the chat. Did you guys have any questions for each other or even for me?
I don't have any questions. I just think it's really great to see Foodshare doing some of this work because like food sustainability, food insecurity, as it relates to like disabled people, it makes sense. And so, yeah, thank you for doing this. And I hope people put in efforts in mobilizing around the joint letter and sharing it with elected officials.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this and connecting us as well. I mean, this past week we had probably the biggest storm that's ever hit at least our part of Ontario and Eastern Ontario. It was just devastating. I mean, I lost power for 4 days. Most of the town came back last night. We have so that's day 6. We've got parts of Ottawa, parts of, further in Eastern Ontario that probably won't have power for another 2-3 days. Okay, so we all lost our food, right? That's now the gap that people on ODSP have, the gap that people with low income, the gap that people that are even just making, if you had a full-time job making minimum wage, you're still slightly under the poverty line right now. Access to food is when you're disabled, you're more limited to be able to get out and get food. When you go out and get food, the people who have money buy it first, and then we end up with a very limited amount or none. And food insecurity, we saw this at the beginning of COVID. We've seen it several times through COVID. We need to find a way so that we all have access to food equally, and it shouldn't matter. Like, the amount of food should be dependent on your needs. It is so frustrating. 2 years later, going through the exact same problem, here in my small town, where big thing happens, the disparity, the income disparity, really, really hurts us. So we can't have food, and then you end up with more health problems because you don't have the food. People who are diabetic and disabled and on the ODSP, oh my gosh, it can be just more barriers get created. We really need to think. We need to think. Emergency planning needs to have people with disabilities thought of first instead of an afterthought. We need to find ways to empower us, those who are disabled, the 2.6 million of us, to be able to have a voice, to be able to, in municipal, in provincial commissions, in ministries, things that affect us should listen to us and hear us and let us influence those things, so that when you're doing things for us, it actually works for us. And, you were talking, Sarah, about that too. The MAID was not developed with us. It's made for us, but it's not done with us. And it's really something that, nothing about us without us really needs to be, heard and implemented, so that we are not negatively affected by the things that happen any more than other people.
I do want to jump in and say, based off of what you were saying, Sada, about Foodshare coming onto this as an organization. I feel like as an organization that is so surrounded on the topic of food justice and what we stand for, like food justice, as you've already said, is the basis of pretty much everything. Like, you can link anything back to food justice, and it all comes back to food. So I feel like as an organization that is doing this work in food justice, in food sovereignty, in land sovereignty, like, we have that, what's the word that I'm looking for? We have that duty to be able to take care of the people around us, especially when we're working with food and we're talking about food justice. Like, it's not even a thank you for Foodshare representing, ODSP and doubling it. It's like a duty of not even just Foodshare, but it should be a duty for all nonprofits that are working in the to have that conversation, because these are the people that you're supposed to be supporting and the people that you're representing. I feel blessed to be able to work for an organization that speaks about topics, but it's still bare minimum and something that we should be doing as nonprofits and organizations with followings, to bring this conversation to our audience.
I think one of the things that's made this campaign of DoubleODSPNow effective during this election is because there's so many groups that have got together that are having one hashtag, one message. I mean, we have lots of other issues with people with disabilities. We have lots of other issues as allies that we also want to get heard. But, when we've come together and just been able to focus and keep this one thing going, it has made a difference. It's made it, disability, people with disability have been a ballot question this election. And I'm really, really want to see that kind of working together of disability organizations and those who support people with disability so that we can find more ways of getting together and finding these issue campaigns that can, use a united voice to try to get some change specifically. It's hard when you have broad needs, and we need to get. There's so many things that we need to change. When we can find these common issues that are the really big ones. There's power in numbers, and I've seen it happen on this campaign.
Yeah.
Well, that is the wrap up of our day for all in our conversation together. So I just want to thank the two of you for all of the work that you've been doing. I know a lot of you are always on front lines in protests, writing letters, demanding for things to double with the hashtag. But I'm very honored to be able to share space and to be able to pick both of your brains and just listen today to what the two of you had to say. And thank you so much for joining us in this conversation today. It's really been very lovely.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kaylee.
Thanks. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of a closing remark. So I just want to say thank you to everyone in the chat for joining us as well. I want to also reiterate that this conversation will be posted onto our Foodshare Instagram so that you can tune in if you weren't able to get all of it, or if you weren't able to watch the whole thing. Say hi to the people that are watching the recording right now. And you can share it with anyone on story and whatnot. I really do want to encourage everybody that is listening at home to stay tapped into the call for increasing ODSP rates as the provincial election approaches on June 2nd. Please don't forget to vote. Early polls are already open if you would like to vote early, but June 2nd is the voting day for the Ontario election. You can learn more about the hashtag DoubleODSPNow and the amazing work that Maddie is doing at DoubleODSPnow.ca and autisticrambler.com. Maddie also has a new podcast out called The Autistic Rambler that I'm excited to tune into myself. And you can follow the Disability Justice Network on Instagram and Twitter at DJ Ontario to follow about some stuff that Sandra Saudi is doing and what that organization is doing for all of the disabled folks.
Yeah, I just also wanted to mention there's other groups who are leading the organizing around the fight against MAID. Folks like the Disability Filibuster, Catherine Frazee, Gabrielle Peters, Inclusion Canada, just to name a few. And you can follow them on social media as well.
Amazing.
And there's other groups like Ontario Disability Coalition, which I'm part of, and so many other really good organizations in Ontario that are really focusing on this double ODSP Now campaign.
Yes. Okay. Thank you guys for sharing those resources, those groups, and people that are work as well. There is a little question in the chat. I'm not sure if Sarah has seen it. So
yeah, I'm just writing my email here.
Amazing.
And I'm also on Twitter at Bolshevik Patty. I always get embarrassed about my personal Twitter name. Anyway, left some contact info there.
Amazing. So yeah, that's it. I just want to thank you both again for sharing your knowledge today and for all of the work that you guys are doing in all of our communities.
Yeah, thank you so much.
My pleasure. I hope you guys have a great day today.
Yeah, you too.
Have a great
and thank you, Maddie. Thank you for everything you've said.
Well, thank you.
I hope we stay in touch. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amazing. All right. And just a reminder for everybody in the chat, please vote on June 2nd. Okay. Thanks, guys.